Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first class for public health advocacy. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm very excited to be teaching this class this time around. I think some of you guys attended the public health class last year, and this one is supposed to be a more interactive version of that class. We're not going to be going over the same information. We're going to be having the structure more student focused so that you are the ones who are taking charge of your own project. So thank you all for joining me today. I am excited to get started. So before we begin, I just wanted to give a few reminders. If you have any questions, at the bottom of the webinar, there's a Q&A feature. On the Q&A feature, you can ask questions, and then I will get to the questions as soon as I can. If I don't get to your question, I'm just say it again or put it in there again so I can see it. But I'll try to get to every single question, and don't hesitate to ask any questions. Another thing is for the chat is enabled so that you can chat with me. So if you have any questions, I would prefer the Q&A, but chatting is okay as well. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So as you can see here, this program is made as a collaboration between Kid Teach Kid and Project Unmasked. Both of these are educational organizations that seek to promote educational opportunities among young students. So we will get into the actual program right now. So first, what is this program supposed to be? I know it's very different from the traditional Kid Teach Kid class, as many of you guys have been pretty loyal Kid Teach Kid students for a while. You probably think this is something that has never been done before with Kid Teach Kid. Usually we just do lecture-based classes. What is this class where I have to do so much extra material? Well, that's exactly why we wanted to run this programs as a collab so that you could do more. So first, Project Unmasked is a national campaign to promote public health literacy through education. So we'll get more into the details of why we're promoting public health literacy through education in a few minutes. And Kid Teach Kid, as many of you guys know, is a nonprofit organization providing educational opportunities for students. And for this program specifically, you will serve as young ambassadors to promote public health in your communities through education. So you'll be the ones who will be spearheading movements and different opportunities for people in your community to learn more about public health and epidemiology. So we'll be doing that through educational resources, through policy implementation, and just through teaching others. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an idea on why we're doing this program and why and what the mission of everything is. Okay, so these are the websites in case you're interested, mass.org and teach.org. All right, so first let's start off with the big question, which is, what is public health? And so for those of you guys who took my public health class last year, you're probably familiar with what it is, but since not everyone has, I'll describe it a little bit. So public health is different from the medicine aspect that most of y'all are familiar with, because public health emphasizes populations and not individuals. So in public health, we don't study, for example, Bob who got a heart disease. Instead, we study what is the prevalence of heart disease among Houston, Texas. So we look at different populations and not look at individual people. Individual people are part of the population, and their health is important to determining the population health. So public health is important because we can use these public health knowledge to predict patterns in how future populations will have for their health. So we can also emphasize prevention, health promotion, and the entire community, how diseases are spread amongst a community, how we can implement programs to help prevent certain diseases in the community, how we can overall improve the health of the entire community population through health promotion. And as we see in the next point, the paradigm, the intervention is aimed at environment, human behavior and lifestyle, and medical care. So we are not necessarily innovating so that we can have individual people get better treatment. Instead, we are trying to innovate in a way that will promote health among the entire population. So I got one question. Oh, I'm kind of laggy. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I think maybe it will get better. Yeah, okay. So next, organizational lines of specialization. The different subjects inside public health include epidemiology, occupational health, nutrition, skills, policy development. That's this one that we're really going to be focusing on, which is policy development. And popularity is more popular because we can see more immediate and curative nature gains so that more people have a positive effect on their health. So that is what a brief introduction on what public. So as we can see with the COVID pandemic, public health has become a much more popular field of study, given that infectious diseases are by nature want to propagate amongst populations. So public health can be used to study how they're propagating and how we can use the lessons we've learned through this pandemic to help prevent future pandemics. So next we'll move on to what is epidemiology. Well, epidemiology is basically the science behind public health. Public health is a greater phenomenon, but epidemiology is how we study that. So as we can see in this long definition over here, it is the study of the determinants and distributions of a disease among populations and the application of this study to control health problems. And what that means is we want to study how does a disease get transmitted from person A to person B, and then person B transmitted to other people, and then other people transmit it to more people. So how do we study that? And then we can also study how diseases actually manifest inside people. Things like that. Epidemiology is pretty much the study of diseases. The study of diseases, mostly about the ways that they have an impact inside groups of people. And as we can see here, it focuses on populations, not individuals. It focuses on promotion and prevention and health promotion, and not diagnosis and treatment. That is for medical care purposes. It is math-based. So as we'll see later on in this program, there's a lot of math involved in epidemiology. And then it emphasizes data collection, visualization, and analysis. So I'm sure you can apply a lot of these concepts to what's been going on with the COVID pandemic. We see daily graphs, these little charts about like new cases, new deaths, little shifts in population dynamics, things like that. Those all fall under epidemiology because they collect data, whole data on different groups of people. So that's public health versus epidemiology. All right, so what is public health literacy? So public health literacy is the central focus of this program. Public health and epidemiology are a segue into public health literacy. So public health literacy, as defined by the scientific community, is the degree to which individuals and groups can obtain, process, understand, evaluate, and act on information needed to make public health decisions that benefit the community. So in simpler terms, it means that people understand what protect the public's health and act responsibly. So for example, during a pandemic, public health literacy would entail people understanding the data and the statistics so that they can act in a way that will curtail the spread of the disease. Or for example, people taking forth their own health in responsible manners so that they promote good habits to their communities and their families. So basically making responsible choices because you're educated in public health. So that is the fundamental essence of public health literacy. And as you can probably figure out, public health literacy is rooted in a very solid education. In order to have a population that has high levels of public health literacy, that population needs to be highly educated in public health matters and in epidemiology matters. So why is public health literacy so important? Why is it something that we dedicated an entire program to further promoting? Well, first of all, it's to combat misinformation. With the pandemic, we've seen so much misinformation, whether that's by talking or by social media or by different news organizations, or just the rapid inflow of misinformation and the spread of that information across various means. And lots of that can be in the form of misinformation. And misinformation is highly devastating to a population because it basically uses the public health illiteracy of some groups of people and takes advantage of that to their detriment. So misinformation is something that is perhaps our number one priority in combating with the spread of public health literacy. So you can see the links between public health literacy and combating misinformation, because if we have a population that has high levels of public health literacy, the misinformation won't infect quote unquote, because they'll be able to debunk that misinformation. So that's why we want to promote public health literacy. A second reason is to promote a healthier society overall. When people are more literate about public health matters, they will act in ways that will help themselves be healthier. They'll place their health at the forefront of their decision making. So that will promote a healthier society overall. And a healthier society is a happier and more cohesive society. And next is to promote personal health responsibility. That goes along with the promoting a healthier society. But in this one, I wanted to sort of emphasize promoting personal health responsibility in relation to everybody else. So we've all lived through this pandemic. Promoting personal health responsibility means following protocols that will help prevent the spread of this virus, whether that be telling your friends what the good ways to act during a pandemic, or combating misinformation, or not engaging in super widespread, or getting vaccinated, or not engaging in super close range activities with other people. Things like that are activities that promote personal health responsibility. So with public health literacy, we can promote each one of these 3 points: combat misinformation, promote a healthier society, and promote personal health personal health responsibility. So that's why we structured this program in this fashion. All right, next. So what is the problem? We already went over this: misinformation, lack of personal health responsibility, and third of all, tensions between the citizens, government, and the public health infrastructure. So we can see lots of factions that arise due to this pandemic, whether that's political or apolitical. It's not very healthy for a society to have people antagonistic to the common goal of getting over the pandemic. So that's what we really want to promote, which is a more cohesive society with less tensions. So the root cause of this is a lack of epidemiology and public health education. So let me know in the chat, in your school, were you ever taught about epidemiology? So the concepts in epidemiology include things like reproductive ratio, the way diseases are transmitted, how you can prevent certain diseases from occurring in a population, things like that. Were you ever taught that in detail in your schools? Let me know in the chat. I'm actually very curious. I'm seeing some no's, a little bit, but not much. Exactly. So no, exactly. This is not a very popular topic that is taught in our schools. I've spoken to lots of students, and everyone says, not really. No one really taught this to me. The first time I learned about this was through external classes, through reading research papers, or doing other extracurricular activities. So that is something we really want to change. That's the fundamental mission of Project Unmasked, is to promote epidemiology and public health education in our schools, because schools are where people learn things, and we want people to learn this in schools. So let's move on to what Project Unmasked has done so far. So I don't want to get too much detail, because you can find all this information on the website. But okay, wait, first let me answer a question. Why do people spread misinformation? Well, there's many different reasons, and we won't know all of the reasons why that happens. But I think part of it is because some people get manipulated, and then because they get manipulated, they tend to believe things that are crazy. And once they're crazy, and once they believe things that are crazy, they spread it to other people, and that will not be a good thing. So that's part of the reason why, and a lot of it can be traced back to not teaching epidemiology and public health in schools. There are some people who are more malicious and spread information on purpose, but it's much easier to combat that when you have people who can easily debunk that and say, no way, that's definitely not true. Why are you saying that? And that's much better than having people be like vulnerable to that and further spread it. So that's why we need public health education. Okay, so whoops, sorry for moving fast. But anyway, going back to, okay, here. So we've had over 1,500 students read our textbook. We've taught public health and epidemiology, and we've brought some curricula into schools for 800 something students. and we've spoken to lots of legislators and lots of different organizations as well. So as ambassadors, you will be the face and voice for public health literacy. All right, so your job this week will be to complete a mini project as part of your training. And I say training very casually, it's just so that you can learn more about public health. And so if you haven't joined already, please join our Google Classroom. This is where I'm gonna be posting like different PowerPoints, different homework assignments, different project assignments, things like that, and different like guides. We don't do that usually for our Kid Teach Kid classes because our classes are much more lecture based. But since this one is so interactive, we really wanted to make it so that you can join our Google Classroom where I can share lots of different resources for you. So if you haven't joined that already, I can go back to this page when we are, let me just go ahead and share this in the chat so that you can join. So this is the Google Classroom join code. So Redeema asks, is this Google Classroom only for your classes or also the work we had yesterday? This is only for this class. Yeah, Google Classroom is not used for any of the other classes. It's only used for the public health advocacy program because of how interactive it is. So for all of your other classes, you can just find all your homework on the Kid Teach Kid website. But since I really want to get to interact with everyone, that's why we have this platform. All right, so this is like a schedule of what we're going to be doing. So week 1 is training, which is, and remember, training is not like hardcore. It's just so that you get to know a little bit more about public health. And then weeks 2 and 3 is teacher outreach. Weeks 4 and 5 are school board outreach. 6 and 7 is political outreach, and, and 8 final presentations. This is completely optional, so don't feel like this is, you have to present anything or something like that. And so for teacher outreach, this is when you'll be reaching out to some teachers and asking if they're interested in promoting public health literacy. School board, doing the same for officials in your district or in your school board. Political outreach, this part is where, this is honestly my favorite part, which is where you get to reach out to different politicians and legislators and people on state education boards and talking to them and spreading the message of why public health literacy is so important. And final presentations, if you're interested in showing off what sort of work you've been doing, what impact you've accomplished throughout these 8 weeks, then you are definitely free to do that. So as I'm saying here, this week you'll complete a mini project as your training. And it's not a very difficult project. It's, I think it's really fun because we administer this to a bunch of students at my school. Sorry, give me a minute, I need to drink some water, but yeah, but I think you'll really like it. All right. So public health mini project, let's get into it. All right, so the scenario is there's an infectious disease outbreak occurring in your region. This is not COVID. This is just any hypothetical infectious disease outbreak that's happening. So for example, over here, I have a hypothetical scenario of an E. coli outbreak that's happening. So go ahead and read this for a little bit and I'll be right back because I need to get some more water. All right, so your task will be to create a PSA, which is short for public service announcement, to educate the public about this hypothetical outbreak and disease. So first, you'll determine which infectious disease is happening. I'll give you a list of infectious diseases that you can choose from, or you can do any other one that you want. Doesn't really matter. It's pretty flexible here. And what you'll do is create an infographic, a video or a poster or anything, honestly, that can give this information out to the public. So for example, right here we have a E. coli outbreak infographic. So Alexandra is asking how we create a PSA. I'll get into that in just a bit. I'll talk about like the specifics on how you're going to do this. So for example, you see here we have an E. coli outbreak. We have this chain of infection, a bunch of different information about it over here. we've got a case definition, we've got some prevention measures, and we've got some more technical things that we'll get into in a few minutes. And then we have some treatments and some control measures. So it basically is a brief overview of that specific infectious disease. And so after you submit that infographic, the best infographic ones will be featured, and you'll fill out the feedback form so we can improve the students' experiences. So now let's get into the details about what's going on here. So I will actually come out of this right now, so I can click on, so I can show you what the instructions are, which is over here. So this is the actual infographic detailed instructions. So this is like the list of infectious diseases that you guys can choose from, or you can choose any other one. It doesn't really matter. And so this is like the information that you should include on there. So things like chain of infection, case definition, incubation period, basic reproduction number, herd immunity threshold, herd immunity, and the type of transmission. Don't worry, I'm going to be going over each one of those terms, so you're not going to be like out of the blue. And then after that, you can just, so specifically on exactly you can make that graphic. There's a really nice website called Canva. It's canva.com. I actually have a few different, three different websites that you can use. I highly recommend Canva. This one is really easy to use, and I use it for pretty much all of my infographics and Instagram posts, stories, things like that. You can also do like a poster or something. You can even write it out and send me a picture or something like that. You can also do a video if you're interested in that. It's really self-expression based. You can do whatever you want as long as it gets the information across. And so the best ones will, of course, be featured because we always want to recognize your hard work. And let me see, I got some more questions. Okay, Alexandra, I hope that answers your question. For the chat, will you be putting these instructions in the Google Classroom? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to be putting everything in the Google Classroom, including the PowerPoint presentation and the instructions and some other resources that I think will be helpful for you guys. So this is due by next Saturday, which is the next class, or and then if you need to do it like one day late, or you want some extensions, just contact me. I'm pretty flexible about this because I really want to make this course more focused on you guys, like more focused on your needs. So just let me know. All right, so now let's get into the details about how you're going to do this. So, or the information on here. So yes, Alexandra, I will be sending everything in the Google Classroom. So as long as you join that, you'll have access to everything. Okay, so number 1 is chain of infection, number 2, case definition, number 3, incubation period, number 4, basic reproduction number, number 5, herd immunity threshold, and number 6, modes of transmission. These are the things that are required on your PSA. And I'll just give an introduction to each one of those so that you know what's going on. All right, so the chain of infection. So the chain of infection is something that we can draw for every single infectious disease. So let's take a look at, let's talk about the flu, for example. The flu is a disease that everyone pretty much knows about. So I'm sure you're familiar about how we can use the chain of infection here. So first we've got the agent. The agent of the flu, of course, is the influenza virus. Well, for whatever disease you choose, you'll need to, pretty much, you'll need to research the different things inside the chain of infection. But if you need help, I can always help you. Okay, and then so basically the influenza virus causes influenza. And then the reservoir is where it normally lives, like what its natural habitat is. So for example, influenza virus, sometimes it comes from animals, such as I believe birds. Other times it can come from other animal sources, but that's where it usually lives. Other times it just lives inside the human mucous membranes of the lungs. That's another place where it lives. So how germs get out? Well, for influenza, it's the portal. So the portal of exit is how germs get out. Sorry about that. So for influenza, it would be through sneezing or coughing or talking even sometimes. So that's the portal of exit. And then next is the mode of transmission, which is how it gets transmitted from one person to another. So in the case of influenza, it would be when you sneeze on someone or if you cough on someone, things like that. And then, oh, you can't hear me? Okay, I'm not sure, but I'm not unmuted right now. So maybe you can like try turning on your volume a bit more. But anyway, portal of entry is how the germ infects someone, how it gets into their body. So for influenza, it would be by breathing it in. And the susceptible host, which is the next one, is who or what can get the disease. So for influenza, it would be humans who have not gotten it before. That would be who's susceptible. So I really don't think this is a super difficult concept because for those diseases that you already know about, you can probably just figure it out. So I'll just give you guys another example. Let's talk about, for example, salmonella. Salmonella is a common foodborne illness. So the germ for salmonella is called the salmonella bacteria. So that would be what the germ is. And the reservoir is where the salmonella is from. So we've got normally salmonella from chicken or raw eggs or just places that are not, or things that are not well cooked. And then we've got the portal of exit, which is how it leaves its reservoir. So salmonella can be transmitted from the reservoir, or sorry, can leave the reservoir through like feces or uncooked meat, things like that. And then we've got mode of transmission, which is how it gets transmitted from the portal of exit to the person. So for salmonella, it would be through foodborne means, through eating food that is infected with salmonella. And then the portal of entry would be how it gets into a person. So that would be by ingestion, so eating it. And then the susceptible host for this would be someone who has not gotten that breed of salmonella before. So that would be the susceptible host. So I think that makes it more easy to understand. How much time do we have? You have a week. Okay, so the PSA requirements, okay, I already went over this. PSA is due before next meeting. Best PSAs will be featured, and please disseminate your PSAs to friend, family members, and community members so that they can learn more about those specific topics that you cover, such as reproductive ratio and things like that. All right, so another thing that you may have noticed that is required on the PSA is the case definition. So what is in the case definition? So first we've got person, place, time, and the clinical information. So the person is who are the people who are getting this disease. So for example, if we have an influenza, let's talk about COVID then. But if we have COVID in Houston, the person would be the people in Houston. And then the place would be Houston, Texas. And the time would be, for example, all the way from like January 2020 until June 2021. So that would be the time frame of when this outbreak is going on. And then for clinical symptoms, clinical information, this usually just covers symptoms. Sometimes if you have diagnostic information, you can include that, but most of the times it would just be symptoms. So for COVID, it would be things like coughing, lightheaded, difficulty breathing, things like that. You can easily find that online. And so the reproductive ratio is another thing that was required on the PSA. And this is actually a pretty easy concept to understand. It's just how many, on average, how many uninfected people does a single infected person transmit the disease to? How much time do we have left? The class ends at 3 o'clock. So the number of secondary cases produced by a single primary case in a completely susceptible population. So let's say we have the measles disease. That's a very, very infectious airborne disease. So one person with measles goes into an entire population that no one has measles and no one has the vaccine to measles. It's just completely susceptible. So that person, on average, how many people will he or she infect? That would be the ratio, the reproductive ratio. So what is so important about the reproductive ratio? You've probably heard a lot of talk about R naught, herd immunity, things like that, with all the COVID stuff going on. So what exactly is the reproductive ratio mean? What does it mean? So if the reproductive ratio is greater than 1, that means that the disease can cause a full-blown outbreak. So the COVID reproductive ratio is around 2 to 3-ish. So it's greater than 1, which as you can see did cause a full-blown outbreak. And then if it's 1, then it will, if the reproductive ratio is exactly 1, then it doesn't have the ability to cause too much damage inside a population. It'll eventually seize and slow down a little bit. And if the R naught is less than 1, that means that it will not really cause much of a problem inside the population. So for example, if you think of foodborne diseases, those R naughts are less than 1 because a lot of the times it'll just peak and then just be done. So that's how reproductive ratio works. And something else you've probably heard a lot is the herd immunity threshold, or just herd immunity. Herd immunity means that when a lot of people have the disease, or when a lot of people are vaccinated against it or are immune against it, then even if you are not vaccinated, or if you have not gotten it, even if you are completely susceptible, then you're still protected because everyone else or a lot of other people are protected against it. So that is what herd immunity essentially is. And the herd immunity threshold means what percent of the population needs to be immune to it so that you, who is susceptible, will be protected. So that's basically what it's asking for. So like in the case of let's do measles. Measles, the R naught is 15, around 15. So let me know in the chat, what is the herd immunity threshold given this formula? 1 is 1 over R naught. What did you guys get for the herd immunity threshold for measles? So usually we would write the herd immunity threshold as a percentage. So what percentage do we need to be vaccinated or somehow immune or gotten it? Just as long as they're immune, what percent do we need to ensure that the herd immunity persists? Yeah, that's right. So it would be 93%. We've got 1 minus 1 over 15. So that's 0.93333. So that would be 93%. So if you need 93% of the population to be completely vaccinated or have gotten it in order for someone who is susceptible to be protected. So I guess a more applicable example, what do you think is the herd immunity threshold for COVID? Let's just use R naught equal to 3. So if we use R naught equal to 3, we can calculate that, which is about 2/3, or it is about 2/3, which is about 67%. So someone asked, is the herd immunity threshold for COVID 70%? Well, since not exact, well, it is about there. Yeah, about that much. It can be more or less a little bit, but that's like pretty much where it is. Okay, another question, is the ratio within a set period of time, or is it how many people are able to affect given a generally long time? The ratio is, it's a characteristic of the disease itself. So when you have a population that needs, that wants to reach herd immunity, that would be how you vaccinate people, like how many people you'd vaccinate, that's how you would calculate it. So I would say, I guess it would be for a generally long time. Why will those people be protected? Well, it's not necessarily that they will be 100% protected, because they can still get in contact with another infected person and talk to them and just transmit it. That's possible, but it's just saying it's very unlikely. That's why those people will be protected, because it's very unlikely that they'll get the disease from other people. So that's basically how herd immunity and the reproductive ratio works. And this is probably one of my favorite topics, and it's very fascinating. So I'm excited for you guys to explore it for each one of the different diseases that you're going to be doing. And remember, you can choose whatever disease that you want to do. So now let's talk about disease transmission, which is the last of the big points on the PSA that you should include. So we've got the first main type of transmission, which is direct transmission. So we have direct contact, which is touching, kissing, things like that, and it can be spread through like things like Ebola and mono are spread through that, and hookworm. And droplet spread is when large droplets are released into the air. Also, I made this PowerPoint a long time ago, so I put COVID on here, but COVID can be spread through airborne means, so this is not completely accurate. So ignore that. We have the flu, the common cold, and what's special about droplet spread is short range, large aerosols. So when you're sneezing onto someone in a short contact, like within 1 foot, then those droplets will reach them and they may inhale them. That's how they get infected. And remember that these are short range and large, which was what distinguishes it from the next type, which is indirect transmission. Indirect transmission, there are 3 types. The first is vector-borne. So mechanical versus biological are two different types of vectors. We're not going to get into that, but vectors are when you have a living thing as an intermediary between the thing with the disease and the susceptible person or whatever. So for example, for malaria, you need the mosquito to infect you. The mosquito is the one that carries the disease. So the mosquito is the vector. So you're not directly getting the disease from someone, you're getting it from an intermediary, which is the mosquito. And Rocky Mountain spotted fever is the same. You get the disease from a tick because the tick is carrying that disease. Vehicle-borne is similar, but it has to do with things that are non-living. So for example, foodborne, you don't get salmonella from like spitting onto someone, something like that. You get it from food that is infected. So the food would be the vehicle. Similar to cholera. Cholera, you have to get it from a source that is not another person. So you get it from water, infected water, drinking infected water. That's how you get cholera. And the fomite is another vocab word that you may know if you want, which is an inanimate object. It's not a substance, it's an object that can transmit the disease. So for example, lice on a comb, you pick up the comb and you comb your hair with it, then you get lice. And the comb would be a fomite because it is the one that facilitated the spread of the lice. Another example of a fomite could be, let me think. Okay, another example of a fomite could be a glove. So if you have a glove that's not clean and then you touch yourself with the glove you touch your open cut with the glove that's not clean and you get infected, that glove is a fomite as well. Okay, so the last way of indirect transmission is airborne. This is not the same as droplet. Remember that you have to distinguish between airborne and droplet. So there's been some recent studies that have found that COVID can be spread through airborne means. And so I did not fix this PowerPoint beforehand, but remember, it can be spread through airborne means. So the difference between airborne and droplet is that airborne is through small particles in the air that can stay there for long periods of time. So if you contrast this with droplet, it's short range and large aerosols. Meanwhile, airborne is long range and small aerosols. So they can be suspended in air for a long period of time and through a very long range. And so that's what makes them very easy to be transmitted from one person to another. A very common example of an airborne disease, or a very classic example, is measles. Measles is highly, highly infectious. And the reason why it is highly infectious is because the measles virus can be suspended in the air and people can come in and inhale that and then they can get infected. Okay, question. How does COVID get into the air? Well, I mean, okay, so first, I guess I don't really want to answer too many questions about COVID because I don't want to give y'all wrong information because things are changing so quickly with the research and everything. So I would suggest that you do your own research on everything COVID involved. But from what I know, it happens through when a person coughs or sneezes into the air. That's how it gets into the air, basically. How can the airborne diseases stay in the air for so long? Won't it fall down? Okay, that is an interesting question, but basically they're so small that they will get suspended in the air. You can't see them, you can't even, these virus particles are very, very small. They're like thousandth, like 1/1000-ish, the size of bacteria, which are already very small. They're very small, so that's how they get suspended in the air. How about other airborne? So same for other airborne diseases. Normally, if you have measles and you sneeze or something, those measles virus particles will be suspended in the air. But the reason why there's lower transmission outdoors than indoors is because there's so much area outdoors. The air is very, there's a lot of air outdoors. So even if you breathe in some of it, if you don't breathe in enough, you still won't get infected, because usually for these types of airborne diseases, it requires a baseline amount of an infectious dose in order for you to truly be infected. So that's why a lot of the times the most dangerous setting for airborne diseases is indoors. All right, hopefully that helps answer some of your questions about what is required on the PSA. All right, so that actually is the end of the first public health advocacy session. I know we finished early, but I did not mean for each one of these classes to be fully 1 hour, since most of this program is student focused. I've said that like many times, but that is really how I really want it to be. And so I just give a little bit of lecturing, and I want the rest of you to have the opportunity to explore everything else. I got another question, which is, how do germs reproduce? Well, that depends on what type of germ you're talking about. If you're talking about bacteria, they reproduce through binary fission, which is when they just divide and they just produce two identical copies of themselves without going through mitosis, meiosis, any of that stuff. It just divides, basically. If you're talking about other germs like viruses are very special in that they are not necessarily living things because they can't reproduce on their own. The way viruses reproduce is that they hijack a cell. For example, they hijack, if you are talking about, let's say like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Let's say if you're talking about hepatitis. Hepatitis is a common viral disease of the liver. And basically what it does is this hepatitis virus goes into your liver cells. It injects its material inside your liver cells. It injects the DNA inside your liver cells, and the DNA gets integrated into the cellular machinery, like with the RNA and the ribosomes and stuff. And then the ribosomes from your own cell have to create the proteins for the virus. And then after it creates the viral proteins, then the virus reassembles inside the cell. So that's how it reproduces, with your own cell. So it basically hijacks your cell to reproduce many copies of itself. And then it bursts and then rinse and repeat. So that's how germs, quote unquote, germs reproduce. Since germs is a very broad category, there are other different germs, such as protists, there's parasitic worms, there's a bunch of others. And each one of those, a lot of them have their own unique methods of reproduction. You can learn more about in my biology class that I took last year and that I taught last year. And it's available inside the Kid Teach Kid archives. So yeah, hope that answers your question. Okay, but before we go, I actually wanted to go back to the Google Classroom thing. So or this page. So make sure you join our Google Classroom. I will be posting this PowerPoint on there, the instructions on there, various resources that you can use. And I will also have like a submission page where you can submit your PSA. So hope as many of you guys do that as possible. And I think this program really is something that is unique. It's not something that you'll get many other opportunities to do, because not only are you learning about public health, the first week feels a lot like a class, right? But in the future, I'm not going to be lecturing. That's not what the point of this program is. The point of this program is so that I can help you guys make a tangible change in your communities, with that aligns with the mission of Project Unmasked. So, for example, with the teacher. So for example, for me, I was really, really passionate in trying to get the curricula, public health and epidemiology curricula, into our school curricula. So I go to Seven Lakes High School, which is a public high school in Katy, Texas. And what I did was I talked to my teachers and I asked them, would you be interested in teaching this public health and epidemiology material for your students? Since we want to combat misinformation and promote public health literacy. And 9 teachers agreed to do it. So we've got over 800 students who are able to learn this material. So I thought, I really want to get this material out to as many people as possible. And given the unique platform that Kid Teach Kid offers, we can have you guys act as the ambassadors for public health literacy so that you can reach out to people who are important in your communities, such as leaders, teachers, principals, school districts, things like that. so that we have a broad reach across the country. And that will really help us further the mission of Project Unmasked and to promote public health literacy. But teachers, I think, are very important, though I think more important is policy change from the top. And what I mean by that is that currently in Texas, if you live here, in our TEKS that the teachers are required to follow, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, which is the curriculum that teachers teach by, they don't include any mention of epidemiology or public health in the biology or health curricula. They don't talk about reproductive ratio, disease transmission, any of the things I talked about today. They don't require teachers to teach that to their students. So this campaign, Project Unmasked, is actively working with school board officials and people on the Texas State Board of Education so that they can amend these statutes inside the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills to include provisions for public health and epidemiology. So we're actively working with them to do that. I think because of the requirements that many teachers are put through in their classes and the tight schedules that they have, a lot of them find it difficult to implement curricula that are not inside the TEKS required curricula. So in order for teachers to really productively do that, we can have policy modifications from the top. And since the education statute is different from state to state, that's why I can only really work in the state of Texas. And so that's why we wanted to reach out through this network of people who are interested in this cause. And so you guys can bring this impact to each one of your different states. And so that would be a great way to promote public health literacy throughout the entire country. And I hope you guys really, really resonate with this message because it is something that has not been given much attention to. We never really see this being brought about in our dialogue. In our educational dialogue, usually it centers around, for example, just the same old stuff that is brought up every single year after year. I attend some of the education meetings that occur, the state board meetings, the district board meetings. They don't really bring this material up. And so it's really up to us to show people how important it is for public health literacy to prevail so that we can prevent those disastrous outcomes that we've seen, like misinformation, like the tension between citizens and government and the public health infrastructure and with each other. I mean, it's really quite surprising what has really happened as a result of this lack of public health literacy. So I'm really glad that you guys are all interested in this cause. You're all one step above everyone else. And I'm really, really excited to see what you guys can all accomplish through this program. If you give it your all, then I'm sure you'll make some meaningful change in your communities, and not just your communities, your state, local, a bunch of different schools. And I'm going to be really proud of all the work that you guys do, especially if you're working really hard. So with that actually would be the end of all the stuff that I wanted to say this week. So if you have any questions, continue to put them in the Q&A, and make sure you join the Google Classroom. And with that, that will be the end, but I'll probably keep the Zoom on in case you still have any questions. And the next class will be happening too. So if you want to stay on the next class, make sure you don't leave, just stay on, and I'll stay on too. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, continue to ask them.